Welcome to all of our distinguished guests. Thank you very much for joining us. This appointment was one of the most difficult I have made for any office because of the extremely high caliber of the four finalists. Any one of them would be an outstanding Associate Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court. Paul Thissen stood out among them. He combines a brilliant legal mind, the highest integrity, and a special understanding of Minnesota from his 16 years of service in the Minnesota House of Representatives and his extensive travels throughout our state. One of Representative Teason's letters of recommendation from Mr. Dale Carpenter, formerly a professor at the University of Minnesota School of Law, articulates what so many others in the legal field respect and admire about him. Quote, over the past 28 years, I have come to appreciate the depth of Paul's integrity as a lawyer and as a person, the maturity of his approach to complex issues of law, the steady temperament he brings to emotional issues, and that I hope to see in judges and public office holders. The diligence with which he approaches the responsibilities he takes on, the breadth of his legal knowledge, ability, and experience, and his unshakable commitment both to individual liberty and to the larger community. I personally can attest to Representative Teason's character and integrity. During the past 7 years, I worked closely with him on many pieces of legislation, his own and other members. Under the intense pressures of end-of-the-session deal-making, he always stood firm on his own principled convictions and for the high standards of proper Minnesota governance. I also witnessed many times his exceptional skills in bringing other legislators of both parties to overcome their differences that seemed insurmountable and reach agreements which serve the public good. Those skills, forged and battle-tested under pressure and adversity, are truly priceless. Finally, Representative Teason has the experience gained from many years and many, many miles of travel throughout Minnesota, meeting with, listening to, and learning from thousands of the citizens whose lives he will help define for Minnesota's highest court. The wisdom he has gained from those experiences will benefit him and the court greatly in the years ahead. And now I'd like to turn the podium over to our distinguished Chief Justice.
Thank you, Governor. On behalf of the Minnesota Supreme Court, I want to thank Governor Dayton for his continued and unwavering support for Minnesota's judiciary. Governor, we are extremely grateful for your leadership and for the respect you have shown the judiciary during your time in office. Thank you so much. Now, today's announcement is the 6th appointment to our 7-member court since 2012. As Chief Justice, I'm working very hard not to take this personally. There is no question that this has been a significant level of turnover on our court. We are a collaborative body, and we consider the complex legal questions that come before our court through in-depth discussions between and among members. The membership on the court matters, and there is certainly a period of adjustment when an experienced member leaves the court. Thankfully, our court continues to be so impressed by the remarkable candidates that come through our state's judicial selection process. In addition to thanking the governor for his support of the judiciary, our court also wants to recognize Lee Sheehy and the members and staff of the Commission on Judicial Selection. The success of our court and the Minnesota judiciary as a whole depends on the quality of their work. Once again, the Commission came forward with a remarkable list of candidates for this newest vacancy. And we're pleased that the Commission was able to work so quickly to get our court back to full membership. Finally, and most importantly, on behalf of my fellow justices, I want to welcome Paul Thissen to the Minnesota Supreme Court. The fact that Paul was selected amongst such an impressive array of candidates speaks volumes about his experience, his legal knowledge, and his temperament. Paul, we look forward to working with you as our court wrestles with the most important legal issues facing Minnesotans. Congratulations to you and your family. Thank you very much.
Pleased to introduce the former Chief Justice of the court, and I want to make it clear that this is not trying to set a precedent for former governors speaking at press conferences in the future.
Thank you, Governor. Most of all, thank you for this wonderful, wonderful appointment today that we're here to celebrate. I have known Paul for a long time, and that's not a throwaway line. I spoke at his Eagle Scout ceremony many years ago, and I watched him grow up. I knew his parents, his family from Bloomington, and it was a thrill several decades after that, but now decades ago, when he appeared before me when I was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in the Supreme Court chambers arguing a case. He was brilliant. He did a great job. So I've watched Paul's career, and then, of course, Speaker of the House, and his private practice, public defense, and his legislative experience. This is the total package. He is very humble, very smart, and will be a great addition to the court because he understands, I believe, the deep respect you need to bring for the law. And people wonder, well, there's different branches of the government here. I can tell you firsthand as a former legislator who then became a judge that I drew many, many times on my legislative experience. It really deepened my appreciation for the three distinct branches of government and what that means, and sometimes it's implicated in cases, and that's just a wealth of knowledge to draw on, and I know that Paul will do that very well. So I echo the Chief Justice's comments here today. It's a great day for Minnesota, one that will inure to the benefit of us all. Thank you, Governor.
And now the Associate Justice Designate, Paul Thissen.
Well, Governor Dayton and Chief Justice Gilday and former Chief Justice Blatz, thank you for being here. And members of the court, family and friends, my wife Karen and my sister Sue are here today with me. And members of the press, I am really excited and inspired by this opportunity to serve as an Associate Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court. Above all, because it really is an amazing opportunity to serve the state that I love so much and care so deeply about. I want to thank Governor Dayton, of course, for this tremendous honor. And I'm going to do everything in my power to live up to your trust and serve the people of Minnesota well. And again, I want to thank Karen and my kids for standing with me in many, many endeavors over the years and their incredible support in doing that. So thank you. I want to acknowledge just many mentors that I've had and friends in my legal career over the last 25 years. First of all, the law firms that I've worked at, Ballard Spahr, which was Lindquist and Venom until about 3 months ago, and Briggs and Morgan have been incredibly generous to me over the course of that time to let me continue to work my legal practice while also engaging in public service. They really set the standard for, I think, what law firms should be in terms of their commitment to the community and to the state in which they work. I'm reluctant to start naming any individuals particularly because it means exponentially more people will be left out. But I do want to acknowledge two people who really have served as amazing mentors to me and their guidance and friendship over the years. The first is Judge James Loken on the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, who I clerked for many, many years ago. And the other is Tim Thornton at Briggs and Morgan, both of whom taught me, I think, the most important lesson that a lawyer has to learn, and that is that you have to think hard, and everything else follows from that. I want to also, of course, thank my colleagues and friends here at the Capitol over the last 16 years. The Minnesota legislature is an amazing institution, which I love. And my experience in the legislature has given me a deep, deep respect for the work of each of the independent and co-equal branches of government and of the court's distinct role in the dynamics of our government. I am now ready to move from policymaking to principled interpretation of the law. That work, guided by the values of our state and by our Constitution, is essential to the protection of individual rights and to preserving our democracy. In many ways, the experiences I've had over the last 24 years, or 25 years, as a commercial litigator, as a regulatory and transactional attorney, more recently as a public defender, in my pro bono work here at the legislature, certainly, but perhaps most importantly, the time that I've spent interacting with thousands of Minnesotans all across the state have led me to, and I think, prepared me well to take on this new endeavor. And serving on the court, I believe, is going to allow me to continue to advance the basic values that have long motivated the work that I've tried to do, to promote fairness, to advance individual dignity and rights, to make sure that we're accountable to each other and that the institutions that are supposed to serve us are accountable to us, and perhaps most importantly, to make sure that every single person's voice is heard. Thank you again, Governor. I really, really look forward to doing this work. Thank you.
I want to again especially thank the Chief Justice and all the members of the Minnesota Supreme Court for your presence here today, and also members of the Appellate Court and others who are here as distinguished guests and friends. I want to pay special tribute and recognition to Lee Sheehy, the chair of the Judicial Selection Commission, and other members of the commission who are here, put in pro bono hundreds of hours, Lee thousands of hours to go through the screening process. I always say they make my decision easy because they send us excellent candidates that can't make a mistake, and they make it hard because they're usually also excellent that it's hard to make a decision. But thank you, Lee. Your service has been just extraordinary. I also want to just anticipate one question, which is about a special election. Representative Teason plans to resign this Friday, and under the law, I do not call for a special election if it can't be filled before the end of the legislative session. It then carries over unfilled to the next general election. According to the Secretary of State, the minimum amount of time which a special election going through the various protocol would be called is 38 days, and there are, from this Friday, 34 days remaining in the legislative session. So it's both impractical and not required by law to call for a special election, so I do not intend to do so, and it'll be filled next November. With that, let's open it up to any questions on this subject.
Representative Teason, you are a leading voice in the Democratic Party, sometimes with sharp elbows over the last 20 years, particularly on health care, children, poverty, those kinds of issues. How do you stop being political when you get to the Supreme Court?
Well, first of all, understanding that that's the case, that the job of the Supreme Court is very different than being a legislator. And so my intent, again, as I said, is to kind of leave the policy making and the politics behind and move on to principled judging and focusing on what the law is. I do think that the experience in the legislature, though, actually is helpful in this regard, because it really has given me this deep respect for the role of the legislature, and much of the work of the court is interpreting the statutes, interpreting the intent of the legislature. So understanding how the legislature operates and being there and seeing what that process is, I think actually gives me pretty deep insight in terms of respecting what the job of the legislature is and what the job of the court is.
Representative, it's been a long time since we've had a former lawmaker go straight to the court. Can you talk a little bit about scenarios and potential conflicts when it comes to hearing cases that you have cast votes on or argued for and against in your time here as a legislator and a politician?
I think we're going to have to take each of those circumstances case by case basis and deal with, and the rules of the conflict on the court are fairly clear, and I imagine that there's good advice that the staff at the court can give in terms of that. So I will certainly follow that advice. I guess that's what I would say to that question.
And in the next few days, are you going to cast any votes, or are you going to avoid casting any votes?
Yeah, good question. I'm not going to cast any further votes. I just need a couple of days to wrap things up while I'm still here. So.
Representative, you said you're going to move from policy making to principled interpretation of the law. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by the term principled interpretation?
Well, the court and the legal system has, pretty often very clear rules, at least standards and steps that you should take in terms of deciding what a case would be. And I think one of the strengths of the judicial system, one of its pieces of legitimacy, is the exercise of restraint. And so applying what the law has said, what precedent has said, applying what the legislature has said in statute, applying how the court has interpreted the Constitution in the past, and following those dictates is what principled judicial work would be, as opposed to kind of imposing my own view of what an outcome should be.
You will be open, clearly, to accusations of judicial activism, I would assume. How will you assure people that that's not the case?
By the work that I do and the opinions that I write.
Representative, did you win the case that was in front of Justice Blatz?
I don't think so. If I remember it.
And you still have her support?
Sometimes fighting the good fight, right? So.
Why did he lose?
His argument. Can I just say one thing on history? Because these are excellent questions, of course, but this is not unprecedented. I was just sitting here thinking of C. Donald Peterson, a wonderful, wonderful justice on our court. I believe he was a Republican candidate for lieutenant governor before that. We've had Chief Justice Popovich, Chief Justice Sharon, who was first appointed by a Republican governor, he was a Democrat senator, and then later appointed by a Democrat governor to be the Chief Justice. So he, for one, showed that he was able to do exactly what Representative Teason was just talking about. It's a special skill set and dedication to do it, for sure, but it is not a skill set that he brings that is not highly valued at the court and has been repeated over history.
Governor Dayton even indicated that your intent was not to call a special election, and nobody, I know, wants to think about if we have a special session or if perhaps there's some sort of an immediate emergency requirement that requires the legislature to meet in the interim on some issue. Would you reconsider in that particular case so that the constituents of Representative Teason's district would have representation here then?
If it's still snowing in July, and I decide, therefore, to call a special session, I will arrange to have a special election before that occurs.
I'm going to make that promise, Governor.
Governor Dayton, you've expressed some skepticism about the way the legislature has treated the single subject rule. Representative Teason is somebody who's taken advantage of the way it's been done these days. Did you have to overcome that skepticism in making this appointment?
I looked at the totality of a record. You isolate one particular item, vote, issue. I don't think you get a fair representation of anybody's career. Paul has an extensive career, 16 years in the legislature, extensive career in private legal practice. I looked at the totality of that and his qualifications in making my decision.
Governor, I'm surprised to hear Chief Gilday say that it's sixth appointment. That is something I guess I haven't thought about. What is the direction of this court? What is the leaning of this court with your appointments?
Well, I don't make justices leave. And I wouldn't want to try. I've done my very utmost to pick the very best qualified people. Again, all this a slate of really top-notch candidates, and to look at what I think would be best for the court, as it is the final arbiter of issues affecting the people of Minnesota. And looking at the justices here, I believe I've been successful in doing that. and the record will speak for themselves.
Governor, this is your Representative Teason will be your 5th member on the 7-member court. How important is it to you to leave a mark on the state's highest court that long outlasts your 2 terms as governor?
Well, I think the judicial appointments are really among, if not the most important appointments I make across the entire spectrum, just because most of them are likely to be on the bench for a long time and considerable time after I leave office. Of course, they're up for election, so people in Minnesota will be the arbiters of that, but I've always, for that reason, taken it very, very seriously and done my utmost to broaden the representation on all of our courts so that they better reflect the diversity now of the people of Minnesota, but not to at any time ever sacrifice quality. I just, you know, and it hasn't been hard to do because, as I said, all the candidates that come to me, thanks to the commission, are just of the highest caliber of candidates.
On this topic? Okay, thank you.